The Immortal John Hancock here, and today I'm going to be talking about a huge success on Kickstarter, and that's the ZX Spectrum Next Issue 2. Why is it so popular? Well, I want to talk first and foremost about kind of my backstory with the ZX Spectrum, because, I live in the States. I didn't grow up with it. And this is something that I had sought out information because, the ZX Spectrum was a very successful early microcomputer overseas. And so it was a huge success, early 80s, and something that didn't come to the States. And the ZX Spectrum, people kept talking about this on classic gaming forums, and I was curious about it. What is this? What games does it play? And, found the community and really discovered how rich and diverse the library and community itself is for the ZX Spectrum. Something that, people, they grew up with it. Lucky you. The ZX Spectrum was an early success with computing and something that we didn't get here in the States. I really love kind of like very classic and simple computers such as like the Commodore VIC-20. In the ZX Spectrum, a lot of the games were on cassette tape, and these were offered at an affordable price. There was literally over, thousands of games made for the ZX Spectrum. Some that come to mind, I think of Jetpack, I think of Manic Miner, I think of Cobra, I think of, tons of games that I've played over time. It had tons of great arcade ports as well. I think of like R-Type on the ZX is fantastic. Commando, Road Blasters, but you have your favorites if you have played the ZX Spectrum. But so fast forward, there's been lots of projects about, retro gaming and, new hardware for classic computers and video game consoles. But this one's a little bit different. I really, at first when I glanced at it, I'm like, okay, it's a new ZX Spectrum, okay? That's not doing this justice because this is so much more than that. Looking at the Kickstarter, and first and foremost, it blew past its goal in the first 5 minutes. That tells you right there that there are people that want a new ZX Spectrum. And so that's exactly what this is. This is not just a modern computer that plays old specky games. This is a huge educational platform. It's development tool. It's really what they're trying to do is if in an alternate reality, make the next ZX Spectrum, because eventually the ZX Spectrum got discontinued. There were several different models with different amounts of RAM and processing power. But if the ZX Spectrum was to compete with, the Commodore Amiga or the Atari ST, this is what this project is, with a bunch of bells and whistles on top of that. So it's really cool. So what they're really trying to do is bring a ZX Spectrum into the 21st century. And so it's going to have fast speeds, more memory, quick loading, and first and foremost, what's really cool about this is you can use original software on this. It's not just emulating. It's way more than that. You can take original software and play it on this device. So that's pretty cool. So, I've been collecting here and there software for a ZX Spectrum, but, over time, hardware is fairly difficult to find in the States. And so it's really cool that these folks are offering new hardware with all the bells and whistles, able to easily hook up to modern devices. I think that's great. While the ZX Spectrum has those options, they are fairly expensive. And so it's kind of neat. It's going to have network capabilities, and, it's going to have tons of graphics, audio and video graphic options. And so one thing I noticed on the Kickstarter is that you're able to hook this up, RGB, many different ways of playing this. If you want to play this on an old school monitor, you can do that. If you want to play it on a modern day LCD, there you go. But it's really cool that they went all out and really getting that feedback from the community when they made this project. So this is phase 2. This is issue 2. So this came out in 2017. So this version looks like it has even more upgrades than the 2017 model, which was super popular. And so there was more people that wanted it than what they produce. And so they're really upping the production. And so on top of all that, so that has sparked my interest. But more importantly, they're making new games for this new ZX Spectrum, and they have several famous people who made previous ZX Spectrum games that are on board. So some of the games are making upgrades. So they're making updated games for the ZX Spectrum, and so some of these are very famous. Lords of Midnight being one of them, and they're taking the graphics and making it to like comparable to like Commodore Amiga or Atari ST. So the ZX Spectrum is going to have its own new updated games made just for it. So not only can it play old ZX Spectrum stuff, it's going to offer brand new games. And so I think that's really cool. And some of the games, some of the graphics and games that they've shown so far are pretty cool. And it definitely has that kind of like early 90s or late 80s look to it. You know, because this was supposed to be the successor to the original ZX Spectrum. And so on top of that, they've also announced that it'll run original software better. There's some games on the ZX Spectrum that just are kind of clunky, and that's due to the limitations of hardware. And so they show in their Kickstarter games running even better with this new hardware. And so that's kind of cool. And so, you know, I have fond memories of playing ZX Spectrum games. I am a fan of classic computing, and I'm so happy for, you know, these types of projects being made because it serves multiple purposes. I think for one, you know, original hardware is always going to die. You know, there's awesome game hardware out there, but it's passionate people like this that are continuing to make the community thrive. There's a lot of fans that grew up with the ZX Spectrum, and it's really cool to see that they're getting new hardware to play on that not only offers original software experiences, but new video games. And you can program and make new games comes packaged with this new hardware. The cost is pretty expensive. This is not going to be for everybody. You know, if you want to just continue to emulate ZX Spectrum, great. You can go do that. If you want to just play some of Rare's classics, you can play them on Rare Replay if you want to go that route. Though the ZX Spectrum library is huge. I have my favorites. You know, I was recently just playing even Bosconian, the arcade port on the ZX Spectrum. Pretty good version of it too. And so, but I am looking forward to seeing where this Kickstarter goes. I mean, it's already, I mean, this will be outdated soon, but you know, it's already close to $1.5 million. That's a lot of money. And it, you know, congrats to them on a successful Kickstarter. They delivered in 2017. It took a while to finally ship those out, but they've been very transparent about the process. Obviously, they have community support. And so that's it. That's really what I want to talk about. You know, that's why it's successful. And congrats. I really like seeing these successful Kickstarter projects, especially when they're listening to feedback from the community, when they're listening to, you know, incorporating all the features that everybody wants into one sleek, nice retro computing device. And so that's it. I'm looking forward to, you know, I really recently kind of delved into playing some ZX Spectrum, and there is a lot there to discover, and I can't wait to see what other games they create for this new device. Did you see the Kickstarter? What did you think? If you're interested in more information, the link is below. But that's it. It's really cool to see these retro computing devices being created and having the community support even better. Thank you so much for the ongoing support. I like talking about these gaming devices on my channel, as you know, I think it's great to continue that love and passion for retro video games. Hit that like and subscribe button as I upload videos every week. You folks are wonderful and beautiful. Thank you for the ongoing support. It is most appreciated. This is the Immortal John Hancock, and you take care.